Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Portugal Calling webinar for Thursday, the 29th of June, 2023. We're looking at the top 5 tips for moving money to and from Portugal under the expert guidance of, yes, the currency coach, Sarah Davey from Smart Effects. Good evening to you, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I think it's just another sort of nickname you've got. We've gone through a few, haven't we? What was it? The currency counsellor and
Currency coach is cool, isn't it?
yeah, I kind of like that.
Although, yes, room for Queen of Currency. I didn't think of that one yet, but that could be a bit confusing with the Queen of the Visas, who we'll be talking to at 9 this evening on the Dream Team session. Yes, so we'll distribute the link for that for the Dream Team session at 9 this evening. Are you sticking around for that, Sarah? You might be exhausted by then, no?
I'll stick around for that as well. So,
Bless you. Thank you so much being part of that panel. But the spotlight is yours alone from now on in this part of the evening anyway. So I think you've got some graphs and slides to show us. You are co-host, so over to you. Thank you for being here this evening.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, we thought we would. We've done a few different webinars that you can look back over, but we thought we'd break it down maybe into sort of 5 sort of easy tips. I think there's always more, but we're going to kind of go with sort of 5. So the first one really wanted to start with, which is probably, I'd say, if I asked you what was the most important thing, you'd probably say the rate of exchange. What rate are you going to offer me? How much is it going to cost me? And that's when you're looking at someone like us, a bank or an online provider. That's what you're really focusing on as your main focus. And what I would say is that if you are thinking about your bank, certainly never assume that you're going to get a good rate of exchange. We've had a lot of customers over the years that have been quite surprised because they've maybe had a lot of money with their bank, they've been with their bank for a lot of years, or maybe they bank with a I say well-known bank, or got sort of very VIP service, but that still doesn't always mean that you're going to get the best rate of exchange. So it's always definitely worthwhile checking that. We had a customer that I spoke to, he'd used Bank of America last year and they charged him about 5%. We've seen a client being charged nearly 9% on a transfer as well. So again, it's always worth double checking what rate that they're going to offer you. And the other thing that we've heard as well recently, customers will say, oh, well, my bank told me they'd do it for free. Nothing's for free, and certainly not when it comes to your bank. So yes, it may be they're not going to charge you $45 to send that money. That's where it's free, but it's still the exchange rate. So you might find you've saved $45, but you've been charged $10,000 on a larger transfer. So as I said, when they say it's for free, it's not for free, but they're probably just referring to the transfer fee when they make that transfer, which it varies bank to bank, but around sort of $30, $45. But it really is, they're still charging you on the exchange rate. That isn't free. Okay, so don't be caught out by that one.
Well, it's an easy assumption to make, isn't it, that the bank would have your best. Well, actually, having said that and saying it out loud now, that banks have your best interests at heart. That does sound a bit silly, doesn't it, when I put it like that? But if you're a 5-star sort of like Gold Club customer, they're charging you 5-star and gold standard rates for changing your currency. Then, by the sound of it.
Well, it's interesting, but I've spoken to actually a couple of banks here in the UK, people that work for them, and they said that they used to be a little bit more competitive, but they're not anymore. I don't know why, but they're just more focused on a lot of other services that they feel they make more money off customers.
Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Essentially. Yeah. And what's interesting, certainly with our experience with customers using their bank, is that often they've never done this before. So that's not really helpful for you because you've never done this before, and you're speaking to someone that hasn't done it before. They've never seen an international IBAN number. They don't have to make the payment. A number of times we've had customers call from their bank and put us on with a bank teller because they're asking them questions, or even my colleague Ben's been telling the bank teller how to input the information on their system. There's certain banks, like we know Charles Schwab, make you fill out a form when you make an international transfer. So you've got to fill in the information on there. We help clients fill that in. It's little things like that, as I said, they're just not familiar with the process. And we just want to make that that a little bit easier for people.
That is so unnerving, isn't it? Going into a bank and asking them to do something, and the person says, "I'm not really sure how we do that." We don't do this very often. I just need to find out from a colleague. Can you wait there? You want to be dealing with people who do it all day long, basically, like Spartan FX here.
Absolutely. And the other thing as well, with the bank, again, it's just experience that we've had over the years, what we've seen happen with customers, and we obviously know their processes really well. But the other thing to bear in mind is that even if you've got a price from your bank now, for example, that isn't the rate you'll actually get. What happens is, yes, they can quote you there in branch or over the telephone, but it's when the money's exchanged. So say, for example, you went today, you got a price off them, but you'd missed the bank cut-off time, your money would go tomorrow. If the rate's changed, then you're going to get a different amount of euros. And the thing to bear in mind there is, if you've got a specific amount that you need to pay someone, so say you're paying a lawyer for a property purchase, you need to send the exact amount of euros to their account. If you're not quite sure what the rate's going to be, obviously you're basing it on what they've told you, but if the rate moves, then that payment could be short. So then you haven't sent enough money, you'll have to make another transfer. Obviously, if it's over, that's a better problem to have, that you're not going to be short, but then you've sent the lawyer more money. But as I said, it's more a case of if the rate moves and you've then got to make another transfer. And usually, I do it myself, we all do it. We do tend to leave this to the last minute. Everybody leaves it to the last minute because it's not high on the list. Certainly when you're moving country, your visa, you're looking at your taxes, you're looking at, have I got a property, where I'm going to live, getting a bank account open. This is normally very low on the list. So we have people that come to us and say, I need to make a payment tomorrow. So they're leaving it definitely to the last minute. So again, if you've got a deadline, you've left it to the last minute and you haven't sent enough money, then you've got to send more. You might miss your deadline.
Okay, very good. All right. What I forgot to say earlier on, Sarah, is hello to folks who are tuned in tonight. So Lowell, Marcia, Denise, Stewart, Warren, and Paul, thank you for being here, among others, Patrick, David, Suzanne. And the first questions are coming in. That's the other thing, is do please get your questions into the chat and I will put them to Sarah after her opening remarks and going through the top 5 tips here this evening. Thanks already, Paul, for your question. And I know as well, there are people who are very happy customers of Spartan FX here who might like to say a word or two about their personal experience as well a little bit later on. And when the recording is over, we can address some of those more personal things that people might not want to share on a webinar that's going to be on the internet for eternity. So sorry, Sarah, back to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, certainly with the likes of an online service like, I suppose, like Wise, we'll probably talk about that through this presentation. People like ourselves, you are able to lock that rate, so you know exactly how much it's going to be. What we have seen more recently is that Wise give you now only 2 hours to get money to them to hold that rate. So I don't know if I think that's something that might have changed recently. Right. But with us, we'll hold the rate really for about 2 days. And if you're still having problems, then we can still perhaps move on that as well. So if there is any delays in getting the money, you've still locked that rate of exchange for a short period of time in that kind of scenario, basically.
Excellent. All right. Thank you.
And yeah, so I have got some graphs. I thought that would be a bit more interesting rather than just hearing me talk all evening.
Well, these are dynamic times that we're living in, aren't they?
Well, that's if I can share my screen. Let's
I think
see if the technology works.
Christine Lagarde has been in Sintra in Portugal, saying that climate change is to blame for higher interest rates, and making the case for putting interest rates up a little bit here in Europe.
Oh, everything's to blame. My insurance has gone up for my car, and they're blaming climate change.
Right. Yeah. Your sore shoulder. Climate change.
Climate change. Okay, let me see. Right, share screen. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, do get those. We can. Do get those questions in the chat, folks. And I'll
excellent. Okay.
What have we got here?
So what we've got here, this is a graph showing the euro US dollar exchange rate. This is over a 6-month period. And really what I just wanted to highlight was around a little bit about timing. I mean, obviously hindsight is a fantastic thing. So obviously I'm looking back and I can easily say, well, we could have done this then and we could have done that. But the principle is really still there. What I wanted to talk about is specifically at the moment, just if you had a payment, so say for example, because people do leave it to the last minute, usually they're making a payment of some description, whether it be a small amount to pay for your visa, whether it be you're paying for rent or you're buying a property, you've got usually a deadline to make. So if we look at this graph, you'll see, if you look sort of around I don't know if you can see my cursor, around sort of April time here, that basically if you'd exchanged your money then, say you wanted to buy about 250,000 euros, it would have cost about $278,200 US, for example. But if you'd spoken to us a month before, the difference on the rate of exchange would have been about $7,000 US. You'd spoken to us 2 months before, the difference would have been nearly $14,000 US. So again, I know it's hindsight, because obviously your payment could have been in March and you would have been in a fantastic position because it would have been cheaper for you to buy then. It's more just to get your head around exchange rates do move, and that's where it can still cost you money. It's not just about what exchange rate can I offer you today against bank, against Wise. It's actually, when are you buying your money? Essentially, that's the thing to bear in mind. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to help you manage the exchange rate, watch out for a better rate of exchange for you, or any market movements. I mean, at the moment, really the main battle is really inflation for a lot of countries. So you're right, Christine Lagarde's come out and said that inflation is too high, and they're definitely wanting to battle it, which is where we saw a little bit of movement more recently, because they increased the interest rates by 50 basis points, and it looks like they're going to do it again in July by 25, and that they're going to do it aggressively like the Fed did last year. And now the Fed have come out, although we thought that they might pause, not because they did it so aggressively last year, they may actually still increase rates by 25 basis points in July as well. So usually when a country increases their interest rates, that normally helps to strengthen the currency. So at the moment, we're a little bit of odds, because obviously the Fed are going to potentially do it again, but equally the ECB. So it really depends on who's going to do it higher and more frequently as to whether that currency will strengthen. And at the moment, we're really just, markets really kind of, I think, a little bit on the tenterhooks about the inflation data, because although, as I said, Christine Lagarde came out recently and said that they really need to tackle inflation, it is far too high. If the next inflation data comes out and actually shows that it's reduced, then she might think, well, actually, we might not need to increase it as aggressively. So again, we're sort of watching on that data. If I look at 5 years, so we go back 5 years, the key thing here is, again, if we look back, actually, we still are really quite good levels generally for if you were selling euros and buying US dollars. But if you generally look, the trend is actually still moving against you. So that's something to really still bear in mind, that while you might think, well, I'm not moving for 6 or 12 months. Yes, no one's got a crystal ball, but a lot of the data and a lot of things that we're seeing is showing that maybe we might get to 115, maybe 120 in the future. So actually now could be a good time to buy your currency, because it could be cheaper than it is in the future. Again, we can just maybe help monitor the rates for you. We had a lot of customers that, again, it depends on your situation, what money you've got available. What we're doing is we can buy euros in advance of you needing them, because a lot of you might think, oh, well, that's all well and true, but I haven't got a Portuguese bank account open. I'm not buying a property yet. I haven't got a beneficiary to send it to. We can hold the euros on account for you free of charge. A lot of clients last year, they bought parity. Obviously, that's a great position to be in, but the option was there for them. So that's the key, I think, that I'm trying to bring across, that there are other options out there for you, and it's just making you aware that they do exist. You can buy in advance of needing them, whether it be all of your euros and we hold it on account for you, whether we have a facility where, especially for property purchases, you can fix the rate. So usually the process of buying a property is you pay a deposit, and then completion can be, say, 6 to 12 weeks time. We can fix the rate today for that future payment. Now, again, we're either fixing into a favourable rate because it might move against you in that time, or if it does move in your favour, you are stuck to that rate. but the benefit is, you're sticking to your budgets. So again, it depends on your situation. Some people are willing to sort of see what happens with the rate. Again, we can give you guidance on that. Others are thinking, right, I want to know exactly how much that's going to cost me, because it's not the same as buying in America or UK or Canada. You get given a price and that's how much your property is going to cost. Here, when you come to buy that property, it could be a couple of thousand cheaper, a couple of thousand more expensive, or it could be $13,000 more expensive. Mm-hmm. So again, it's helping you to maybe manage your budgets a little bit.
Okay, that's great. And yes, so people needn't miss out. The headline point here is the guidance that's available, isn't it? Yeah. So you needn't miss out historically, in a sense. And although there is no hindsight machine or crystal ball, you can stay in touch with the Spartan FX team to get the rate that you feel comfortable with. And it's not financial advice. It's just staying in touch with what's going on and understanding what's going on and making the decision at the right time to suit you.
The other thing as well is opening an account with us is completely free. Doesn't cost you anything to open an account, and there's no obligation to use our service. But what I have seen over the years is that something happens, there's an election, or, there's a natural disaster, or obviously pandemic, Ukraine-Russian war, and the markets do move very dramatically. And all of a sudden people want to take advantage of that rate for various reasons, but they haven't got an account with us. They can't do that. So, or if they're using their bank, they've got nowhere to put the euros. So it's just a case of being prepared so that you can take advantage of the rate, or you can buy and just basically perhaps have a little bit more control over this.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you very much. It was really shocking for it suddenly to go from a green graph to a red one. I was suddenly worried.
No,
there's no great significance for that.
Yeah, it's because usually Euro US dollar, that's how it's priced, and that's majority of graphs of Euro US dollar. So but a lot of people, they see this as a negative if it's dropped a little bit, because obviously they want the euro for it to get better, but we don't. We want the euro to weaken and the US dollar to strengthen. So that's why they can't change the colours, unfortunately.
Right.
And that's it. I don't know how to not share screen anymore.
Oh, okay. I can sort that out for you. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Oh, you've done it. Great.
Brilliant. There we
go. All right.
Got the technology.
And thank you, everybody, for your questions. They are stacking up in the chat, and Paul's helping out as well. Fantastic, Paul. Excellent stuff. But back to you, Sarah, for the time being.
Yeah. So the exchange rate movement, again, I think it's just an element. Just don't overlook when you're thinking about the exchange rate. And again, I know that people have longer time frames. They're not moving till next year, but it's still something, again, to bear in mind, because if you definitely come into Portugal, you're definitely going to need euros. That's the ultimate thing. So that, there's lots more we can maybe do and help you with that at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So the
good point though, because escudos are not accepted anymore. Haven't been for a while now. So you definitely need a euro. Although I dare say there are a few people here tonight who've got an escudo or two in that funny pot people have of all the old currency. The world travelers here will have a little pot somewhere, won't they, with all the currencies and coins that they didn't change in time and brought back with them. They don't want to get rid of them. They didn't put them in the pot on the plane.
You never know, they might be worth something in the future, isn't it? People collect coins and old stamps and things like that. So maybe.
Yeah. Okay. There's an idea for a future webinar. That old escudo you've got could be worth a fortune. Sorry, that's an unnecessary distraction. Sorry.
No, that's fine. It's still, we're all talking about money. So the third one is a little bit more serious, but security and fraud. So again, it's not to scare anyone, but it is something that we need to raise and make you aware of and get you thinking of that side of things when you're making transfers. So, for example, one of the things I would say is, if you're paying a beneficiary in Portugal, for example, you're given an IBAN number. Say your lawyer gives you an IBAN number over email. That email, well, first of all, the person's written the email, there could be human error. So someone could have checked, a digit's wrong by accident, or the email gets intercepted and a different account number gets put in there as well. Now, if you were, say, doing it with your bank, or you were doing it with an online provider and you were doing it yourself, as long as the IBAN number is a valid IBAN, a valid account, that money will go. It won't flag up that actually this is not your lawyer's account. it will just go because it is a valid account. So what we would do, and what we recommend you do if you didn't use us, is we always ring the beneficiary and just double check those details over the telephone. That would be definitely what I would recommend that you do, as I said, if you didn't use us, because that's what we do, just to avoid those sort of things. And unfortunately it happens, maybe the human error more so than most, but it definitely does happen, and you don't want to find that your money's gone to the wrong account just purely through the fact that it's human error or you've not checked the details.
Yeah.
And the other thing, again, probably of a similar thing, you're sending large amounts of money and you haven't paid to this account before, I would do a small test. Now, it may cost you a little bit to send, I don't know, 100 US dollars, but you'd rather lose 100 US dollars than 100,000 US dollars or 50,000 US dollars.
Yeah.
So I would definitely recommend that if it's an account you've not transferred to before and you're thinking about doing anything that's of a larger sum, I would always do a small test just to make sure it gets there fine and it is actually the right account as well.
Mm-hmm. With the IBAN number, Sarah, I mean, it is a long number, and it is worth checking, isn't it? And it is something that, like you said before, some people aren't used to. Some people in some personnel in American banks have never even heard of it. It's a peculiarly European thing. And again, it's not like the British system of the sort code in the account. It's just one long number, isn't it? And so it is worth checking that all those digits are right.
Absolutely. I mean, it is easily done. I mean, you know yourself, you give someone your telephone number or something like that. It's a long, lots of digits. You easily get one of those digits wrong when if you're typing it in. Mm-hmm. So we have seen it happen. And unfortunately, we have seen emails intercepted. It unfortunately does happen with clients and lawyers, or with, I've seen it with financial advisors. I've seen it with all sorts, where unfortunately somewhere along the line, whether it's with the client or with the agent, that the email can get intercepted and someone's put different details in there. So again, just wouldn't want that to happen to you. Always check the beneficiary account details over the telephone, even if you've had it on WhatsApp or you've had it on an email. Again, there's human error, and I would do a small test if it's a large amount.
Great, good advice. Any more to say on safety and security?
The other thing that a lot of people ask about security of our accounts, obviously, and they ask about how much, is the money protected up to a certain amount, because that's usually the case when money's in a bank account. And what I would say is that our accounts are slightly different, and as far as they operate very similar to a bank account, so they are in your name, but they're not just segregated from our assets, they're also safeguarded. So what that means is actually all of your money is protected. So if anything should happen to us as a company, you would get all of your money back. Whereas usually with other providers, foreign exchange providers, usually it goes into a client pooled account, which is then only really protected up to about the 85,000, I think it is. So all your money is protected. The other thing as well is we are, where the money's held, we're authorised and regulated by the FCA, that's in the UK. For certain countries, you need certain regulations or licenses in place. So for America, it's with FinCEN, and then you need to have a money transmitter license in every state that you want to deal with a customer, and we have it in every state. So we're covered to deal with Americans. With Canada, you don't need licensing, and certainly other countries you don't. In Australia, it's ASAC. So there's certain countries that definitely need some sort of licensing, and we have it where we need it.
That's great. All over the states then. That's a serious amount of compliance, isn't it? In every single state. Excellent. Good to know.
And then the fourth tips, that was the third one. So the fourth one was thinking about, we said before about, it's all about being prepared and thinking about this earlier than you need to, because again, I know it's very low on the list, or most people do come to us last minute, which is not a problem. But one of the things we do see time and time again, and again, it's not about the rate, it's not about exchange rate movements, it's can you get the money out of the country when you're not there? And we see it, unfortunately, time and time again. People will come over on a scouting trip, or they've moved over. Previously they've maybe done some transfers when you're in your home country, they've gone through fine, not a problem. As soon as you step foot out of the country, it could become an issue, or you're starting to do larger sums, then that's where, again, it's probably compliance. You need a bit more authorization. They need you to come in branch to fill in a form. Maybe you need an international card reader, which is easy to get in branch, but again, you need to go into branch to get it. We've seen customers give power of attorney to their friends and family, again, obviously only if you trust them. And then, you know, we've seen it where we've spoken to customers where their banks put a limit on how much they can transfer. We had a customer who could only transfer $70,000 every 30 days. They were trying to buy a property. It would have taken us 6 months to buy that property. So
that is especially shocking, that one, isn't it? Can you imagine that moment when they found that out? I mean, that is a shocker. So these are all the assumptions that need challenging, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Again, and the thing is, you know, it might not be as simple, but it could be very simple to do a couple of things in advance, and then it just makes it a whole lot easier. You know, to think you get there and you think, if I'd only just signed that form, or if I only, you know,
yes,
something very simple,
yeah.
and it would have made that easier. Because then sometimes people unfortunately have to fly back, so that's a cost, obviously, and we're just trying to avoid that kind of hassle. And again, you know, it might be fine if you're just moving money for your own convenience, but if you have any deadlines, then that becomes, well, it becomes more stressful than it really needs to be.
Yeah, well said. Okay. Anything more on this, on tip 4? All about the timing, I suppose. We summarize this, don't we?
Yeah, I think it is about the timing. I think with everything, I mean, I know a lot of the dream team that you speak to, everyone will say, think about it beforehand. I know that's very difficult because there's so many things to think about. But I really would, you know, we've spoken to a few clients that have moved to Portugal, and, you know, they've definitely said, we wish that we'd focused a bit. They did a little bit, but they wish they'd focused more on the foreign exchange and the tax than they did. Right. At the time. They were obviously, rightly so, more focused obviously on the visa and getting a property, and actually the excitement of moving over, which is great, but they wish they'd done a little bit more research, or a little bit more, before they'd got here.
That's very interesting anecdotal insight there. Putting it another way, you can't start this too early, really, can you? I mean, because you can, like you said, it's a free account. You could do that as, I mean, the problem here, of course, is people don't know what they don't know. And however, tonight you're telling them a few of the pitfalls and things that can be avoided. But you can't do this too early, really, can you? You can open up your free account and you can start the conversation with with the people who we know, nominated individuals who people have grown to love at Spartan, who they speak to on first name terms, and who phone them in the United States at all hours of the night and day. You can start that straight away, can't you? As just one thing you've ticked off on your list.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the things that because you rightly said, the team have dealt with lots and lots of people, lots of expat Portugal members that have been in your position and have now successfully moved to Portugal. They have a lot of experience, and they've got a lot of experience with the banking system and bank transfers. You know, so there may be a way that it's just a case of having a chat with us and saying, right, this is who I bank with. This is, you know, and it may be that we have experience and say, well, actually, we know that bank is a little bit more difficult. Have you got another bank you can move it to? Maybe open an account with a different bank before you, and then move your money, so that then it's in a better bank to then move it out of America, for example. As I said, it just might be you asking a few more questions to your bank. What do I need to do? And usually, sometimes it is paperwork, because all of a sudden you're doing small amounts, and all of a sudden you want to take out, I don't know, £100,000 or more. Of course they're going to be like, when, you know, want to do extra checks that, you know, this is legit, or, you know, ask more questions around security. And it may be just a case of filling in a form, or, as I said, some banks, I think, is it SunTrust maybe, you know, they give you an international card reader, but you have to apply for it in branch. It is easy to do, and I think it's free to get. So again, it's just sort of a little bit more preparation of you know, what your bank needs, and then yeah, we can help you
could
with
be
that as well.
you could be quite angry waiting at the airport, knowing you're only flying back to go and get a card reader. So that's well worth knowing about. Thank you for that, Sarah. I think we're on to tip number 5, aren't we?
I think we are, yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's don't leave it to last minute.
Yeah.
Is what I would say.
That's after you've been on eBay, right, looking for a SunTrust card reader.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, sorry, I shouldn't laugh. That's an expensive mistake to make.
It is an expensive mistake.
Back
We're
to you.
we're definitely trying to avoid you flying home and getting that having to
But
sort
there are a
that.
few people now in this call, I think, who are putting their SunTrust card reader on eBay.
Yeah,
with the oldest,
it's on the Expats Portugal forum, not on eBay. Expats Portugal forum.
alongside their oldest kudos that they might think will be worth something too. Okay, over to you for the last tip of the evening before we go to questions.
I mean, one of the things about not leaving it to last minute is if, for example, you going back to the bank scenario, we've seen clients where it's taken 5 to 10 days for the money to arrive if they've used their bank. It's taken some time. We had a client, it took them 5 days. Another client who the money didn't turn up and got returned to their US account. We've had clients, again, because it's taken a long time or it hasn't turned up, they've missed deadlines. Wow. It may be that then, what happens if you miss your deadline for a property payment? What happens then? Client couldn't buy a car. What do you do then? Got to rent another car. That's an extra cost. You might be penalized because you've missed a deadline. Will they charge you a little bit more because of that? So again, it's, yes, I could use my bank, but it takes a bit longer to get there, but it actually could end up costing you more. And it's obviously stressful. I mean, we've had clients, I spoke to a tax specialist recently and he said his client was like tearing their hair out because their money 2 weeks and it was like 500,000. And there was no word as to where it was.
Sarah, but this is important, isn't it? I mean, tell us about that and how this works, generally speaking. You get the IBAN number in, you get the amount in, and this is a tense moment. It's like something from a Jason Bourne movie, isn't it? When the progress bar is moving across, you press the button, and like in that scenario, waiting for a week, 10 days, it just like evaporates and disappears, and it's waiting to come into the right place. Is that what you're talking about there?
Pretty much, yes. That's it.
Scary stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
with Spartan, I guess you could at least speak to somebody. You're going to struggle, I think, aren't you, to possibly get through to some of the helplines of banks?
Yeah, definitely. And even sort of, as I said, customers that have tried to use Wise is that what they found is that if the money's been delayed, they're trying to contact somebody and they can't get through to anybody to find out where the money is.
Yeah.
Or we've had clients where, they've tried to use Wise and, the exchange has gone through fine, but when it comes to send out the euros, then they've asked for compliance documents. Then that obviously delays the payment. They're trying to get the compliance documents. They haven't sent the right ones in. Then they haven't. What's happened is Wise has sort of said, the computer said, oh, well, we haven't got what we needed after a certain period of time. Therefore, we're going to send your money back and we're going to close your account.
Yikes.
So again, it's sort of what we try and do is collect all the compliance up front. And another benefit of that is that with the banks as well, if you were doing it through your bank, sometimes the Portuguese bank, for example, the beneficiary bank, will flag payments. So what they're doing is they'll probably be sort of either spot checking every X amount, or maybe it's something specific they're looking out for, maybe certain size or whatever, where it's come from maybe. And what they'll do is they'll just check it for, it's sort of anti-money laundering really. They'll just check it and just say, look, we need a bit more information about this payment. They'll then send a message back to your bank. But again, probably your experience trying to open a Portuguese bank account and their communication with you, they send an email back to your bank. Your bank then takes however long to respond to that, sends that message back. And in the meantime, if days have gone by and your money's been held up. So it's not to say that it will get there, but this obviously takes time. Whereas what we do is we do all the compliance up front. So we've got everything we need. So there's no delays in the payment. But also what it means is that if we get the message from the bank, we can jump on it straight away and give them what they need, and then try not to delay that payment.
So taking as much stress out as possible of that moment when you hit the button and 50, 100, 200, 250K disappears into thin air until it arrives where it should be arriving. Okay. Yes. So thank you for that.
We've got also extra tracking on the money as well, which means that we can track where it is at all times, and then we can tell you when it's actually in the beneficiary account as well. So if, for example, it's not being sent to your account, it's going to be sent to, so we had a customer who, for example, they were going to buy this property and they had to pay the builder, and the builder did say that he would agree to sell to this woman, but there was another interested party that was kind of offering a little bit more money, but he was actually honoured the agreement he had with this woman, which doesn't usually happen, I think.
Right.
But she was very keen to get the money there ASAP, basically. But what we did was we sent them the proof of payment. So we said, look, here's proof that the money's coming to the builder. You can send that on. We work with the client and their I think it was estate agent, realtor, with the builder, sent them the proof of payment. As soon as it hit the builder's account, we sent them that and said, look, it's in the builder's account, he's got it. And they got the property. So again, it's sometimes just that bit of reassurance that we can provide as well.
Right, it's great. I mean, that tracking is very reassuring. And of course, it should be possible in this day and age, but I guess the banks don't necessarily.
I mean, they can send the money quicker, but they don't. There is obviously the capability because we send it quicker. It's the way that we send the payment.
Yeah, well, they might charge you more. They won't miss up on an opportunity like that. Okay, superb.
And I think that's it, really. I think that, as I said, that all of it really is down to sort of 0.5 is just don't leave it to the last minute if you can avoid it. I mean, obviously that does happen, and we can make payments very quickly. If we can get your money, so say you said US dollars, sterling, Canadian dollars to us, we can get it to the beneficiary within 2 hours. I mean, I think the quickest I've seen it go into beneficiaries like 15 minutes. It's practically instant. So we can get it there very quickly, but ideally don't leave it to the last minute, because there are elements of banking transfer times and things that are obviously slightly out of people's hands, and we don't want you to miss any payments, and ultimately try and lower the stress, because that then becomes more stressful. That's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and from our testimonials and communication we have from your happy customers, we can certainly say that's true, that you minimize the stress. And actually, people have got favorite people at Spartan, haven't they? And say hi to Ben for me. And people have formed some very interesting and long-lasting relationships at Spartan FX. So whichever way you look at it, she's the currency counselor, currency coach, currency queen. Choose whichever one you will. What you didn't mention, Sarah, were these awards, and that's what it's all about. That's why you get these awards, isn't it? Because of that personal connection that is made.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see behind me there, we've got FIFO. It's very similar to Trustpilot. It's just exactly the same, really, but it's FIFO. And what it is customer reviews. So it's actually our real customers leaving reviews, and we get a very high number of 5-star reviews, which means that we've earned platinum status now. And we've been consecutively, probably since we started, getting an award. Just purely because for the high number of 5-star reviews. So you want to check out, either, as you can see, speak to other Expat Portugal members, but also have a look at our reviews. And I think, to be fair, that for me is the best thing, because, you know, I tell you how we help customers, I go through examples, but that's real life, and that's the
right. Word of mouth. We love that. Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you very much. Let's get into a few questions. And if you want to hold your question until the recording is over, if it's of a more personal nature, feel free to do so. But we'll take a few questions now, probably 10 or 15 minutes worth of that. And we like to celebrate good news as well. Stuart, just back from Dublin to collect our visas. Nice. Even got to meet the ambassador while in the embassy. Wow. Hope you got some selfies there. Fantastic. Maybe had a drink even. I'm thinking maybe in Dublin, you might get offered a drink in the Dublin embassy there. Now all our plans can be turned into actions. That's great news, Stuart. So glad to hear that. Warren's in Canada. Marsh is in Canada as well. Lowell in Maryland. I know you've got a question, Lowell, as well. David and Denise in South Africa. How are you this evening, Denise? Suzanne in smoky Pittsburgh. Yeah, the Canadian wildfires. We have had a strange sunlight here that's been affected by the wildfires in Canada. So really sorry to hear about that, and hope that's resolved quickly. And people talking about, I mean, literally, come on over to Portugal. The water's lovely. There is a competition here. It's a resonance of the best place to live in Portugal between Paul and Jerry, I think. But Paul has 31 degrees of pool temperature, whereas Jerry only has 30 at the moment. But just keep an eye on that, because that's going to run and run, as you know. And Warren's saying, actually, in Canada, always cold. People who think it's always cold, they've actually had over there a lot of 32-degree plus days in Ontario this spring. Good to know. So first question from Paul. Question, Sarah, with interest rates getting higher and clients holding back, are clients holding back to place money with Spartan FX where the interest rate is zero? So if you're holding money, that is something we didn't address, is you're not giving interest on the money you hold. That is a convenience that you offer.
Yes, that is correct. So that's where it's slightly different from, interest-bearing accounts. It really is more of a goodwill. I suppose it's weighing up, how much, depends where you have it, how much interest are you actually, say, for example, we hold it for 6 months, say, as a maximum. How much interest would you earn on that money wherever it is? Yeah. And then how much we could maybe save you on the exchange rate. And that's kind of what to sort of balance it out. And I think depending on if you're really lucky and it's somewhere that's really in a great interest bearing, then generally the saving on the interest rate is generally better. But again, I don't know where you're holding it and what you're being offered.
Do the math, basically. And Paul, if you do know of anywhere that's paying out high interest rates, people are, I think the banks have been slow, haven't they, putting up interest rates, but they haven't exactly been doing great products for people who want to save money yet. Maybe that's in the post, and that's what the question refers to there, Paul. We'll come back to you later on.
I mentioned briefly about, aside from buying euros in advance, and we hold them for you, the full amount.
Yeah.
The other option, but really because of the regulation behind it, you generally have to have a specific reason. So it's more around, I'm buying a property or I'm definitely paying for something. What we can do is we can fix the rate with just a 10% deposit. It's not a cost or a charge, but it fixes the rate, and then you pay us the 90% when you actually need it and take full delivery of the funds then. So as an example, if you were buying a property and, as I said, completion was in 12 weeks, we could secure the rate today. You pay us 10% deposit because we buy all the euros up front. Then in 12 weeks time, you pay us the remaining 90%, and then we send all the euros out at that point, but you've been able to fix the rate. So depending on the situation, what you're doing, there may be ways that we can implement that where you're only giving us 10% and then you're keeping the rest maybe in higher interest, but it's a little bit sort of grey around why you're doing it, maybe more specific around a property or something specific as to actually being able to do a contract like that.
Fair enough. And your currency contact at Spartan FX will be able to talk you through it if you're not exactly sure what Sarah means about any of these specifics, and they're always available for conversation along those lines. Okay. I don't know what this is the answer to, and I might have missed something here, but Paul says, easy, have your payments sent into Spartan FX in sterling, and when the exchange rate is in your favor, then hold in a different currency and do an exchange. Now, that's verging on advice and speculation there. It's an interesting serving suggestion. Thank you, Paul. So I thought I would read that out. But this is not financial advice, and we're not urging people to speculate. So this is a service that helps. I mean,
the accounts that you have with us are multi-currency, so we can hold any currency pretty much that we offer on account. And where we've seen it, where the other way is, for example, maybe you've got some issues about transferring money, so maybe it's a case of send us the US dollars and we'll hold them on account, then you're over here, you see something, and then we do the exchange. And that's maybe before you left, if you have an idea of your budget and you're coming on a scouting trip and you need to make some payments. Also, we can accept third-party funds as well, so maybe, for example, if you sell your house in the US and the money's coming from a lawyer, we can accept funds from the lawyer and we can hold the US dollars on account for you, and then you can exchange them at a later date as well. So there's flexibility around that. We can hold sterling, euros, Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, Swiss francs.
All right. And as far as Paul's comment is concerned, I mean, if people have an appetite for risk, they could change currency and do currency swaps and endeavor to make some profits doing that.
Not not with us. So speculating on the currency. So for example, you got sterling, you buy euros and then you move the money back and you're doing it to make a profit. That's speculation, and there's firms that do that. But because our service is the way it's regulated, it has to be deliverable. So it has to be for a reason. Yes, we can hold your money on account, but ultimately you're buying it because you're moving to Portugal. You're going to need it for a specific purpose rather than kind of hedging on the exchange rate like that.
Very good. All right, good. Thank you for clarifying that. Lowell, I'm a happy Spartan FX customer. You guys are terrific. That's a lovely little review tonight. What is your percentage fee for exchanging 300,000 US dollars to euro, for example? There is this information published on your website. Could you just go through that again for us, Sarah?
So for fees for us, we're quite transparent. There's no transfer fees. There's no sort of side commissions. It is just on the exchange rate. We do offer a very fair service. And as far as if you're doing, say, small amounts and then you've got a large amount to do, we'll give you the same. We'll charge you the same for any amount that you do. It's not a tiered structure of, the more you do, the better the rate you'll get. We offer a fair sort of service on that perspective. And you're right, it's very much similar how I explain. It's like anywhere you like a wholesale price. For example, you've got a chair, company will buy it at a wholesale price and then sell it to you at a retail price, and that's essentially sort of it. But it's on that's where we make our money, and we're very competitive on that. So certainly we haven't got that sort of structure on our website, but certainly do get in touch with us and we can talk you through that and give you prices.
There you go. Expats Portugal at spartanfx.co.uk, or call the number that's on the screen. I hope that helps Larry and Sally there. And of course, we can't give an on-the-spot quote here on a webinar. So, but I think that helps there, Larry and Sally, with the question you were asking. This is a little bit out there, but it's quite an interesting thought from Warren. Is the BRICS currency going to trickle down to everyday financial transactions for the Portuguese public, or just for the international trade? And it's not just the BRICS currency, is it? I mean, there's much talk of digital currencies going on. I guess that must be part of the conversations you have in the Spartan FX office. But people don't need to worry about that at the moment, though, do they? These things are somewhere down the line.
At the moment, no, it's not something that we do offer.
Yeah.
I think when sort of foreign exchange didn't used to be regulated, so I suppose maybe it started like crypto, but now it does, and obviously crypto isn't regulated. So maybe if it becomes regulated, then it'll be more widestream. The challenge we've got is that we've had a couple of clients where they've been selling their house and they have been offered crypto, but they don't deal in crypto, so they don't want to take it. So I suppose that's the thing you've got to bear in mind, is that probably more people need to adopt it for it to then perhaps be more mainstream.
Okay, so in that sense,
for people to actually then buy and sell.
Yeah.
But for at the moment, it's all right if you are just sending it to your own account, but if you were going to buy that house and you're trying to give them crypto and they don't use crypto,
yes,
they're not going to accept it.
So in that sense, you are a traditional company, and these newfangled inventions that might be in the pipeline are not part of the conversation. We're talking about
not yet.
Dollars and euros.
Maybe in the future, but
yes,
not at the moment.
Of course, not at the moment. But good question, Warren. Thank you for that. This is a popular question tonight. How best to handle monthly social security retirement benefit conversion with Spartan FX? You might have some use cases on this, Sarah, with people already doing this.
Yeah, I mean, any sort of regular payment, certainly like a pension or some sort of salary or an income or something you're getting on a monthly basis. I think there's a couple of things to bear in mind. One, it depends on your situation. So over the years, I've seen it where they're getting some sort of income or a pension, and they need that money every month to live on. So you've got limited options, and as far as you have to do it every month. You can't just wait and see if the rate's a little bit better or I'll buy a bit more, that kind of thing. You've got to do it every month. So there may be things that we can kind of try and do to try and make it cheaper each month, but it is something that's going every month. Whereas if, for example, you have a little bit more money and you think, well, actually, I don't need it this month, I can let it rack up for a little bit and maybe do it in larger sums, then there may be ways to look at that.
Okay.
There might be ways that we could maybe I talked about this contract of the 10% and then paying 90% when you need it. A lot of that's used for things like off-plan properties as well, you know, where you've got stage payments every month of a smaller amount. So there may be something we can do with the rate there like that, where you're actually buying, I don't know, a year's worth of payments, and then you pay us every month and you draw down on that, and then you can lock into a rate. So there may be things that we can do there.
All right. With the social security thing, there's a good chat going on, and that's the advantage of being here on the night. There's some good crosstalk going on in the chat, and we'll return. Connie, thank you for your input. Then we'll return to that probably with the mics open after the recording's finished, because there's some good, useful tactics there that we can talk about. So thank you, Connie, for the information you shared in the chat. So make sure you're here when it's happening live, and you can do that by becoming a member at expatsportugal.com. I'm not sure what we can say about this. This is how it is, really, isn't it? This is like one of the unfairnesses of life in a way from Barak tonight. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing Russian roulette, watching the rates go up and down, knowing US Feds are going to raise rates, could strengthen the US dollar versus the euro if I exchange now and the rate goes up by 0.05. Could that make a big difference? If it doesn't and it drops by 0.03, I think people could relate to this pain and anxiety here. It could cost me even more. I almost feel like I should flip a coin. Now, there is no crystal ball here, is there? This is the reality of life. But what would you say to somebody who is struggling in this way, Sarah?
I mean, it's easier said than done. Try not to let it consume you, but it is easily done, isn't it? You kind of all of a sudden watching it like, but that's our job. We're doing it day in, day out. So try and let us take some of that burden for you, and let us monitor the rate, and we can we actively contact our customers as well if there are movements. I think one of the things that I often hear, certainly the dealers sort of say, is kind of think about what's your ideal rate, as in maybe when you started this journey, what's the price you're working on? Is it better than that is now? You know, where are the rates at the moment? So when I showed the 5-year graph, that's the reason I do that, because we're so focused on this, suddenly it's sort of, it moves tiny percent. Oh my God, you know, whereas if you look out, actually overall are we at good levels? And overall, what are the trends, and are we seeing actually a lot of people thinking that the trend is that, as I said, towards the end of the year, that we could see, you know, over 110, 15, maybe 120. I mean, they're saying that the thing is, even though the Fed may increase interest rates in July, the overall thought is that the ECB are going to do it more aggressively, because the Fed already did that last year very aggressively. So they've already done that, but they're still doing it a little bit. Whereas, you know, they were the first country to do that, ahead of the UK, really, and ahead of really the Eurozone. Now the Eurozone are doing that. So actually, if they're doing it more aggressively like the Fed, then even if we see a small increase by the Fed, it'll counteract that potentially.
Yeah.
Okay. And then also, again, you know, what's your time frames? There's thoughts that, you know, obviously with elections next year and the way that they, you know, look at their monetary policy at the time, we may see some US dollar weakness there as well. So there is a lot to consider. But again, sometimes it's not always about looking very short term and what's happening this week. It's actually what's happening over a 12-month period.
And that's really helpful. I think that could take a lot of the heat out of the situation.
And I think it does a little bit, yeah.
What would you be happy with? And then you can kind of cut your losses effectively, can't you, or literally, and know that you've made a decision that you're happy with, rather than staying up late at night pondering and worrying about it. So I hope that helps, Barak. We're coming up to an hour. Who knew? So I don't like the recorded part to go beyond an hour, generally speaking. So just a quickie, and then we'll make sure we address everything that's in the chat when we've turned the recording off. But just a quickie here. Connie says, did I understand correctly? I can secure a rate today with 10% down, and within 3 months, 12 weeks, the purchase transfer must occur. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I use that as an example, but I suppose it depends. If you, for example, you're buying property, it depends what your timeframes are. Sometimes, you know, completion can be 6 weeks. Sometimes it takes longer, and it moves on. And then, you know, if, for example, you did do that and said, look, I've got a payment in 12 weeks. Let's fix the rate today. 12 weeks come and it's been delayed completion. we can roll the contract, so that's not a problem as well. But again, let us know what timeframes and what it is you're doing, and yeah, that could be a possibility for you.
That's great. Thanks for the question, Connie. So over to you just for a final word then, the currency coach, Sarah Davey, who's with us from Spartan FX tonight, and then we'll turn the recording off and we'll go to some of those more personal questions. So Sarah, yeah, final word from you, if you will. And of course, you'll be joining us on the Dream Team session, and we'll put the link for that into the chat in just a moment. Yeah, your final word, Sarah.
I mean, I know I've broken it down to 5 tips, but I suppose we can probably just summarize them again. It's just the exchange rate on the day, just checking what that is and making sure that it's not more expensive than it really needs to be. The exchange rate movements, again, definitely worth thinking about, although don't become obsessed with them if possible. And as I said, try not sort of necessarily small term, longer term, depending on obviously your situation, but it definitely needs to be factored in. But don't worry, there are options available. Security and the fraud, again, when you're making the transfers, just bearing that in mind, checking those details, making small tests. We're just trying to make sure that, you know, the money gets to where it needs to be. Think about what you need to do, maybe ask a few questions, you know, thinking about moving your money when you're not in the country, or even it might just be moving larger sums of money sometimes. So again, do a little bit of research, and essentially just don't leave it to the last minute.
Yeah.
As with most things.
Yeah, as with most things, there's a little life lesson there, a little life lesson. Don't leave it to the last minute.
But I'm guilty of that. So, but if that happens, we can get the money there quickly if need be.
All right, Expats Portugal at spartanfx.co.uk if you want to drop an email or give a call on the number there. Sarah, for the time being, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you, everyone.